Hello again, welcome back to Asgard, and welcome back to our Erebus Tutorial Spotlight series. So today we're going to be talking about farming and kind of some of the unique mechanics within the Erebus related to farming. Before we do that though, before we can get on to that, Vadis let me know on the Between Lands Discord that I missed something. I never realized that this was a thing, but it is a thing and I wanted to mention it in this episode. So if you have a stag beetle, you have this guy tamed and you're riding around on it. If you take a look inside the controls, if we scroll down to Erebus, stag beetle dig. Never even noticed it. Like, it's just one of those things, you know, I've looked at the Erebus controls so many times, totally overlooked this. So what you could do is, depending on where you're targeting, you can use your stag beetle and use your button to dig a 3x3, and it does drop the blocks, as you can see, and we can dig, and I mean, you can spam this. It creates like a super mining tool, and of course you could take this into other dimensions and it would work. You can also dig down if you want, so it's a little bit more difficult. You might even, once you get the positioning to kind of where you want it, you might do it in third person. I don't know, whatever's easiest, but you can dig down if you so desire. So kind of a really neat little feature there that I had totally overlooked for like years. So anytime you have the Erebus, you have a fairly easy sledgehammer option, like mobile super sledgehammer or something, which is pretty neat. Alright, so moving on, what we're going to be talking about today is farming, and we're going to be covering a variety of plants. These aren't all of them, these are just the first that I grabbed to cover, as well as a few mechanics as well. Now first up, we have mentioned that there are berry bushes that spawn. We passed up some of these in our first episode, and I made mention of them. These will grow into a full block space. Cannot use compost on them, but you can use compost on the grass. But these will grow into a full version, and then you'll be able to harvest berries off of them. Pretty straightforward. And one thing to note, if you can get your hand on heartberry bushes, I find that they tend to be a little bit more rare than the other two. But you will occasionally see these, and you can get heartberries, which if you eat them, they are basically like a free healing berry. So quite useful. Definitely worth maybe farming up, depending on the pack, of course, and if you find yourself low on health, like in Tails, for example, there is no passive healing, so you have to be active with your healing, and so those berries can be helpful for that as well. Now, moving on, a few different crops that you can come across. The main three right here are turnips, cabbages, and mandrakes. And if we plant these down, you can see that turnips can be planted on grass. This is only true for turnips, not true for cabbages or for mandrakes. So just bear that in mind. But you can plant them in farmland as well, if you so desire. One thing to note is the Erebus, of course, is very dark. But none of the Erebus-based crops require light. But if you're planting, say, wheat or something like that, you will need light, of course. Like we talked about, in the last episode, you will need light for those. But for these three, they can grow, whenever it's pitch dark. So, and these work just as you might expect. Whenever they grow, break them off, and you're going to get the respective crop. You're going to get mandrake, you are going to get turnips, and you are going to get cabbages. Now, as far as getting these three basic crops, your basic seed crops, mandrake root, you are going to find this in the petrified forest biome. So keep an eye out for that when you're running around. It does kind of stand out. It's got these flowers on it, so just watch out for that. I have seen some of these seeds, by the way, in chests and things like that, but that may be something that's maybe pack specific. But actually, I believe they can come from chests with the broken bones and things. But I know at least like cabbages and stuff. Cabbage seeds, you're going to get these just by breaking tall grass within the Erebus. So it's kind of like the wheat variant for the Erebus. And then lastly, you have turnips. You're going to find these very rarely in jungles. They can be a little bit of a pain to find sometimes, but look out for those in the jungle biomes. And of course, there's lots of grass and stuff and plant life in the jungle, so generally finding something that may spawn like that, it's going to be a little bit difficult, but bear in mind that the jungle grass is a little bit darker than this, so it will stand out a little bit better than this. And they're pretty straightforward. They're basically just seed crops that you can plant and make use of. Now next up, if you get mushrooms, these work just like vanilla mushrooms in that you can bone meal or compost these and get your large mushrooms. We already talked about flowers. Bear in mind, don't forget that if you break the stigma, you will get 1 to 2 seeds, and then you can place that seed down to make a flower, and then bone meal that flower to get the giant flower, kind of in the same vein as mushrooms. And as you're exploring the Erebus, you may find small mushrooms and you may find large mushrooms, which will in turn drop small mushrooms. Now next up, let's talk about dark fruit. You may have noticed these vines hanging down with this fruit on them. This is dark fruit. And let me grab just some dirt so I can get up underneath this. What you're going to do is break off the vine, which depending, it can be a little bit difficult, but of course you can always pillar your way up and stuff. You're going to notice that it just changed from the dark fruit to kind of this. That is important, okay? If dark fruit changes like that, when you break this, you're going to get dark fruit seeds instead of fruit. So I got 2 seeds because I had 1 in my inventory. If I break the vine with nothing on it, I'm not going to get anything. There's more seeds. But moving on up, if we break that, you're going to see that we just got 2 dark fruit. You're generally going to get anywhere between 2 and 3 seeds or fruit, respectively, from these. But you are looking for these for seeds, these for fruits. And if you break off above them, you're going to notice they will drop fruit, though I find that you don't get as much output from that. You can see that I only got 1 dark fruit, 1 seed, 1 dark fruit. So actually breaking the specific block by hand tends to yield a bit better. So just kind of bear that in mind. And the fruit, of course, can be used for eating and stuff, like you might expect. But and then maybe any added recipes and things like that. Dark fruit seeds, though, you can plant these. Don't plant them in farmland, of course, because they're not going to grow. Plant them on the bottom of something. It can be stone. It can be dirt. Just plant them on the bottom and they're going to start growing downwards, as you might expect. So that way you can get some dark fruit. Move it back to your base. You will notice that the fruit kind of comes and goes. So it's going to be, nothing, and then it'll randomly grow into some dark fruit, and then it'll randomly become seeds. So just having it out, it's going to kind of swap back and forth. So just kind of keep an eye on it. It's not something that necessarily just grows to 100% growth and it's done, but it's something that you'll kind of want to keep an eye on as to when you want to harvest it, right? And it will continue to grow downwards until it hits a solid block, such as the grass down there. It looks like this one has hit the grass and will of course stop growing at this point. So pretty straightforward, basically just a vine crop. Prickly pear cactuses are kind of the alternative to cactuses within the Erebus. These will need to be planted on sand of some sort. No, stop it. I'm going to talk about you in just a minute. You guys are taking over. So these can be planted on sand. They can be planted adjacent to each other, as you can see, unlike normal cactus. And they will grow up, and you will be able to get prickly pear. Actually, let me warp over so you can just see some that have grown. Usually, there'll be pretty big packs of these. They're not overly rare. You guys have seen them. I mentioned them in the first episode. There's some growing. But these are going to grow up to about 3 high. And at this point, if you break them off, you'll notice that I'm going to get a couple prickly pear cactuses back. And then I'm also going to get a raw prickly pear, which I can then use, cook it to make the cooked prickly pear, which is another food source that you can consume. So, and of course, it only takes 1 of these to grow, so it's you can kind of easily duplicate your prickly pear cactuses and get fruit as well. But just bear in mind that it does have to grow up to 3 high to get that fruit. But it's pretty easy to duplicate, so if you only have 1 prickly pear cactus, you're fine. it's not going to take you too long to get a big stockpile. But they are super common in the ulterior outback, so they're not too difficult to find. This is a fairly common biome in my experience, albeit a bit dangerous. Alright, so that pretty much covers the main crops. There is one other kind of sort of crop I classified as a crop that I want to talk about. But, alright, so back over to our farm. Yeah, you can see our heartberry bush. They grow kind of slow, but that's alright. If you have anything that increases tick time, it will be able to grow faster, or, you know, ticks to a block. But back over to our farm, there is one thing I want to mention to be aware of when you have a farm. Okay, in addition to just general trampling that can happen with the farm that you need to watch out for, you know, if a beetle runs over this, he may bounce on the water and smash some crops. Or if an ant goes over this, ants are usually not too bad, but once again, kind of put lily pads on top just to protect your farm. But just general trampling things, there is also a creature that loves farms. That is the grasshopper. If I place this guy down, you're going to notice that he's going to run over and he's going to start just consuming crops. When he does, it's going to break the crop off. And you'll notice it didn't drop the respective item. He's going to eat the cabbage. And you can see that as he's bouncing around the farm, he's going to trample things. He's a terrible, terrible creature. So you want to kind of maybe protect your farms from grasshoppers because they will just go around. They will consume everything. They will trample your farmland. And in addition, there's one other terrible caveat. We're going to give him a second here. Now, in addition, he will eat tall grass also. So he may stumble upon some tall grass, consume that. There's a pretty good, yeah, that one, he's eating some grass over here. So pretty good chance that that's what they're eating if you see them in the wild. But if they ever come across your farms, they will consume everything. They will destroy your farmland pretty quickly. And you may come back to no farm because between his eating and his trampling and what he's just probably about to do, yeah, there we go. So after he eats, I don't know, it's like 5 or 6 crops, he will duplicate into, basically he will breed and create another grasshopper. And then those 2 grasshoppers will then continue to consume everything in sight and breed. And eventually you're going to have a swarm of grasshoppers. Now sometimes they will kind of derp out and do this, whatever he's doing, you know, where they just bounce back and forth in one spot. It's like they're really confused as to what they should be doing. But you can see this one, he's still busy. He's still busy just consuming everything in sight and having just a grand old time eating everything. Now, in addition, it gets even worse. After the grasshoppers have bred a certain number of times, I think that one has bugged. Maybe. It's actually really common for grasshoppers because it's like they want to jump to a certain spot. Oh no, he found something to eat now. But it's almost like they want to jump to a certain spot. Like I think maybe this one wants to eat this grass, but he's just really confused as to how to best get there. Oh, maybe not. Maybe I fixed him. See, a little shove. That's all it takes. Now he's figured out how to get to where he wants. He wants that cabbage. Anyways, back to this one. After these have bred a few times, what can happen is this grasshopper may breed and then become a locust. This is like the super version of the grasshoppers. We've talked about locusts a little bit because you will see their spawners. But they are a very hostile, fairly powerful creature. They're basically the super grasshopper. They're kind of like a mini boss that can spawn up. And if you have a farm at your base, you come back and there's a horde of grasshoppers. And, oh yeah, and this, I should mention these do have thorns on them, so just bear that in mind. You see he's jumping on it and taking some damage. I don't think I mentioned that. But you may come back to your base and there might be a locust or 2 and some grasshoppers. There is a cap on how much they can breed, you know, how many grasshoppers can be in a space. No, there we go. We got another one here. We got another one. So, just kind of bear that in mind. They will wreck crops and they have just a grand time if you don't keep them in check and don't deal with them. Blocking off, kind of double fencing off your farms can do the trick. Of course, these guys can fly, they can jump, they can do all kinds of fancy things, and they hit like a truck. So they have very successfully destroyed this cropland. Okay, now the next thing we're going to talk about is mold and moss. Of course, we've mentioned before that mold can be found in the petrified forest, just growing. It's very, very common once you find that biome. Moss, on the other hand, grows just about everywhere. As you can see, it's all over the place, and this stuff will spread at a pretty decent rate. So it's going to be pretty easy for you to come across, pretty easy for you to find. Now, once you get some of this, you can plant it back at your base, and you can grow it as per normal. But in addition, you can also upgrade it. If you take a look, we can use the moss with some cactus green and supernatural velocity to make cultivated moss, and then mold, we can use that to make cultivated mold. This stuff, normally it grows a lot faster, but I have discovered that normally, in my experience, at least in the past, this stuff would spread like at an insane rate. Cultivated mold, you're going to want to grow this on rotten wood. The cultivated moss, you can grow on pretty much anything. Just make sure that there's some water nearby, usually. In the past, I remember that the cultivated stuff would grow like super fast, but for some reason it's not. And I thought, well, maybe it's a mod, something up with my mods or something like that, and tried just having only the Erebus in an installation, but it did not work the way that I remember in that case either. So I don't know if it's buggy in the newest version of the Erebus. I'll have to check, or what's going on with it, or if the speed was just decreased a lot. But I found that the cultivated mold didn't really grow any faster than normal mold. So I feel like it's probably an issue with maybe this version or something like that. I know in the past there would be times where you'd put down cultivated mold and it would just boom, just spread like super fast, like you could sit and just watch it just fill up an area. But it's not it's not that fast, as you can tell, and the same with the cultivated moss. But the mold, just make sure you've got rotten wood to grow that on. Just a heads up there. And then what we can do with this is we can run a composter. Composter, you got two different slots here. The bottom slot, you're going to put in mold or your cultivated mold, and that's going to allow that mold to basically eat what you put into the composter. And then what you can do is you can take pretty much any kind of biodegradable material and throw it into the organic composter, and it's going to consume that biodegradable material and your mold, and it's going to basically eat it and turn it into compost. And you're going to see that your cultivated mold does 2 items per piece of mold. Standard mold does go a little bit further. The cultivated, of course, supposed to be faster than normal mold, but until it's fixed, I don't know, maybe I'm losing my mind and doing something wrong that I've forgotten about, but I can't get it to grow like super fast like it's supposed to. So I don't know, but the cultivated or the regular mold is going to do 4 items per piece of mold within the organic composter, and that's how you're going to get your compost. And this stuff, of course, as I mentioned, can be used in all the ways that bone meal can be. It can be used in those ways. So just a heads up there. And then I want to talk about bamboo. Bamboo is another thing that you can farm. Collect all the farmables the Erebus has to offer. What we can do is we can plant down colossal bamboo shoots, and you're going to come across this whenever you're breaking bamboo. And this stuff can be grown into this tall bamboo, and we can break it then. Sometimes get bamboo shoots, but not always. And I have found that bamboo tends to not be super renewable. It kind of falls into those trees where you don't tend to get as many saplings as you might hope, but because you need these colossal bamboo shoots to kind of spread it. So you may have to explore a bit. Bamboo, you're only going to find this in the jungle, but I find that it tends to be pretty common in the jungle. As you can see, I got bamboo shoots there. I did get one there, and I did not get one on the last one. So as you can tell, you might have a slow, steady decline on your bamboo. So just kind of heads up on that. Maybe farm up a bunch whenever you find it. It's used for quite a few things. We're going to talk about some of these in the next episode when we talk about kind of useful kind of odds and ends within the Erebus. We're also going to talk about the smoothie maker in that episode. I think it falls better into that episode. But bamboo, like I said, tends to be pretty common. Just check those jungles for that, and you'll probably come across it. Oh, that has grown. See, it's not as fast as it used to be. It used to spread really, really quick, and it was kind of known for growing super fast, but for some reason in the most recent version, I know even just a few versions back in the 1.12 version, it would grow a bit faster, but now it seems like maybe it's still a little bit faster than regular mold, but and moss, but I don't know. It's still pretty slow. I mean, you can see over here the cultivated mold is moving at a very, very slow pace at the moment. So, and those bamboo shoots, those colossal bamboo shoots, you can use those to heal your beetles also. So just a heads up on that. If you don't have another mod that will allow you to heal, well, really, honestly, if you have access to it, I would probably make splash potions of healing, just because bamboo shoots tend to be as rare as they really are. I know in Tales I put a recipe to make these from bamboo just because I didn't want, I kind of didn't want running out of bamboo shoots and having to go farm more of those without a way to make them renewable, really truly renewable. So, but yeah, so anyways, I know it's about wrapping up point for this episode, so we are going to end this one out here. Next episode, we're going to be talking about some of the useful items within the Erebus, some of the bamboo items that you can make, the smoothie maker, and then in addition, some kind of odd and end sort of things that you have access to within the Erebus. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, as always, be sure and hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe if you're not already, to stay updated with when new videos come out, and I hope to see you guys next time. So until then, as always, do take care, stay safe. I'll see you guys then.